Why was the Shakya clan destroyed? Even the Buddha could not save them. On circumstances, once, while the Buddha was residing in the deer park in Benares, he had only recently attained enlightenment. At that time, King Pasenadi had just ascended the throne. King Pasenadi thought, "Now that I have ascended the throne, I should marry a daughter of the Shakya clan. If they agree, it will please me greatly. If not, I will use force." The king then instructed an official to go to the city of Kapilavastu to arrange the marriage with a daughter of the Shakya clan. The official arrived in Kapilavastu and conveyed the king's message to the Shakyas. King Pasenadi sends his regards and wishes to marry a daughter from the Shakya clan. If you agree, it will be a great honor. If not, the king will be forced to use pressure. Hearing this, the Shakyas became very angry and discussed among themselves. "We are a noble lineage. Why should we marry into a lower family?" Some agreed to the marriage, while others disagreed. Among them, a man named Mahanama said, "Do not be upset. King Pasenadi is ruthless. If we do not agree, he will attack our land. Let me handle this." In Mahanama's household, there was a servant woman who had given birth to a beautiful and virtuous daughter. Mahanama dressed the girl in fine clothes and brought her to King Pasenadi, saying, "This is my daughter. She can marry you." King Pasenadi, delighted with the girl's beauty, made her his chief consort. Not long after, she became pregnant and gave birth to a remarkably beautiful son. When it came time to name the child, the king invited an astrologer. The astrologer said, "When you sought a bride from the Shakya clan, some agreed and some disagreed, causing a rift. Hence the child should be named Vijudaba, meaning lava." King Pasenadi loved Prince Vijudaba deeply. When the prince turned 8, the king said, "You are now old enough. You should go to Kapilavastu to learn archery." The king provided the prince with attendants and sent him on an elephant to his maternal grandfather Mahanama of the Shakya clan, saying, "Your father has sent you here to learn archery. Please teach him." Mahanama said, "To learn archery, you must train diligently." Mahanama gathered many young boys to practice archery with Vijudaba. The Shakya clan had recently built a grand hall, resembling a celestial palace, to be offered to the Buddha and his disciples. Vijudaba and the other boys entered the hall and climbed onto the lion throne. Seeing this, the Shakyas were outraged. They pulled him down, dragged him out, and scolded him, saying, "This is a slave's child. No one dares to enter here, yet this slave's child dares to sit on the lion throne." Someone pushed Vijudaba, causing him to fall. Vijudaba stood up, feeling deeply humiliated. He saw his playmate Hidudaba, the servant's son, nearby and whispered, "The Shakyas have humiliated me like this. If I become king one day, remind me of this incident." Commentary: Humans often have a tendency to become angry when things do not go their way, leading to harsh words that cause mental pain and suffering for the listener. Pushing Vijudaba to the ground was merely an additional act, akin to adding fuel to the fire, making it blaze even more intensely. However, it was the humiliating words that were the most damaging and malicious. If handled wisely in such a situation, a gentle request would have sufficed to make the children listen. If they did not comply, they could have been removed from the lion throne gently. Then, the children should have been asked to play outside, the door should have been closed, or someone should have been stationed to ensure they did not come back in and cause trouble. Absolutely, no child should have been humiliated in any form, especially not with actions such as pulling, pushing, or hitting. If the situation had been handled in this manner, there would have been no repercussions. However, due to karmic consequences, the Shakyas spoke and acted in such a way, creating a reason for Vijudaba's actions later on. Let us continue to follow the story below. 2 ancient grudges. From that moment on, Hyuko never forgot to remind the prince. When King Pasenadi passed away, Vijudaba ascended the throne, and Hyuko reminded him, "Your Majesty, remember how the Shakyas humiliated you." At this, Vijudaba's anger flared. He convened his ministers and asked, "Who rules the people now?" The ministers replied, "Today, your Majesty is the sovereign." King Vijudaba commanded, "Then prepare the army and chariots. I intend to conquer the Shakya clan." Once the military preparations were complete, King Vijudaba led a powerful army toward Kapilavastu. At that time, some monks heard the news and informed the Buddha. Hearing this, the Buddha went to sit in meditation under a tree along the path Vidudaba would take. When Vidudaba approached, he saw the Buddha, dismounted from his chariot, walked to the Buddha, bowed, and asked, "Why do you sit under a barren tree when there are lush trees nearby?" The Buddha replied, "The shade of one's kin is far superior." Vidudaba reflected, "Today the Blessed One is here for his kin. I should return and not attack Kapilavastu." With this thought, the king ordered the retreat of his troops, bowed to the Buddha, and returned home. After some time, Huko reminded the king again, "Your Majesty, remember how the Shakyas humiliated you." Once more, Vidudaba's anger was kindled. He ordered the army to march on Kapilavastu for the second time. Again, monks reported this to the Buddha, who went to sit under the same tree. When Vidudaba saw the Buddha, he approached and bowed as before. The Buddha reiterated, "The shade of one's kin is far superior," and recited a verse. "The shade of one's kin, from the Shakyas came the Buddha. They are all my branches and leaves. Thus, I sit under this tree." Vidudaba thought, "The Blessed One comes from the Shakya clan. I should not attack and return home," and ordered his troops to retreat once again. After some time, Huko reminded the king of the past humiliation once more. This time, Vidudaba summoned his army, consisting of elephants, horses, chariots, and infantry, and advanced toward Kapilavastu. Upon hearing this, the Venerable Mahamoggallana approached the Buddha, bowed, and said, "Today, Vidudaba has mobilized a formidable army. However, I can prevent him from harming Kapilavastu by transporting the entire city to another world." The Buddha asked, "Can you transfer their past karma to another world?" After contemplating for a moment, Mahamoggallana replied, "I cannot transfer their past karma, but I can lift the entire city into the sky." The Buddha said, "Go back to your seat. Can you lift their past karma into the sky?" After a few moments of reflection, Mahamoggallana responded, "Indeed, I cannot. But may I create a large iron cage to protect the people of Kapilavastu?" The Buddha replied, "Mahamoggallana, can you cage their past karma?" After contemplating again, Mahamoggallana acknowledged, "Indeed, I cannot, Blessed One." The Buddha said, "Go back to your seat. Their past karma has ripened, and they must face its consequences." Then the Buddha recited a verse, "To make the sky the ground or turn the ground to sky, the bonds of past karma cannot be undone." Reflection: King Vidudaba had a loyal minister who continuously reminded him of the old humiliation, leading him to march his troops twice only to retreat after encountering the Buddha. Due to his respect for his father, King Pasenadi, who was a devout Buddhist, Vidudaba felt obliged to honor the Buddha and withdraw his forces. An important point to note is that King Pasenadi was a devout Buddhist, yet he had a son who knew nothing about Buddhism. This ignorance allowed personal grudges to drive Vidudaba's actions, leading him to seek revenge and thus create evil karma. When King Vidudaba advanced for the third time, the Venerable Mahamoggallana suggested using his supernatural powers to transport the Shakya clan to another world, hide them in the sky, or create a large iron cage to protect Kapilavastu and its inhabitants. However, the Buddha rejected all these suggestions because supernatural powers cannot counteract the karmic results of past actions. The Buddha asked the Venerable, "Can you use an iron cage to cover up past karma?" What is past karma? It refers to the fully ripened karma created in the past, which must now be faced. Just as planting a tree eventually leads to it bearing fruit, and when the fruit ripens, it must fall naturally. Similarly, creating bad karma leads to inevitable consequences. We follow the next section of the story. 3. War. At that time, the Shakya people heard that King Vidudaba was leading an army to attack them, so they mobilized and gathered their 4 divisions of troops within a yojana, approximately 10 miles or 15 to 20 kilometers, to confront the enemy. When they saw the enemy approaching, they fired arrows at King Vidudaba's forces, but they only aimed at hats and hair, avoiding the heads, or at armor without injuring the bodies. They also aimed at bows to break them without harming the people, or at chariots and flags without taking lives. King Vidudaba, seeing this, became frightened and said to his ministers, "We must kill them all before we can return to Shravasti." Then the Brahmin Huko advised the king, "Do not be afraid, great king." Why? Because the Shakya people all observe the precepts of the Buddha. They do not even wish to harm insects, let alone people. You need not fear. Let us advance, and we shall surely defeat them." Encouraged by this, King Vijayadabha confidently advanced, forcing the Shakya people to retreat into their city. Once outside the city walls, King Vijayadabha's soldiers called out, "Open the city gates, or we will kill everyone inside." At that time, within the city of Kapilavastu, there was a young man named Shama, about 15 or 16 years old. Seeing the two sides fighting, he donned armor, grabbed a stick, and single-handedly charged out of the city to fight King Vijayadabha's soldiers. Being strong and skilled in martial arts, he killed many of Vijayadabha's soldiers, causing their infantry to scatter in disarray. Seeing this, Vijayadabha himself fled and hid in a pit, asking his ministers, "He looks like a mere boy, yet wherever he goes our troops scatter. Is he a god or a demon?" The Shakya people within the city, seeing Vijayadabha's troops being killed and defeated, learned that the young man was from their city. They called him back and said, "You are still young. Why bring disgrace upon the Shakya clan? Do you not know that we follow the Buddhist precepts and practice virtuous deeds? We could defeat the enemy. We could kill many of them. But that would mean killing countless beings. The Buddha has said, anyone who kills will fall into hell after death. If you understand this, leave immediately and do not harm anyone further." Hearing this, Shama left the city and went to another country. King Vijayadabha, seeing the boy retreat into the city and not come out again, felt relieved. After some time, he ordered his troops to shout loudly, demanding that the city gates be opened without delay. The Shakya people debated whether to open the gates or not, but couldn't reach a decision. At that moment, the demon Mara Papian, knowing their predicament, transformed himself into a Shakya person and urged them, "Open the city gates. Why endure this siege any longer?" Following this advice, the Shakya people opened the city gates. King Vijayadabha then ordered, "The Shakya people are numerous. Swords and spears cannot kill them all. Bury them up to their necks in the ground, then have wild elephants trample them to death." The ministers carried out the king's orders. They commanded the soldiers to bury the Shakya people up to their necks and let wild elephants trample them. Vijayadabha also commanded, "Select 500 beautiful girls for me." The ministers obeyed, capturing 500 beautiful young women and imprisoning them for the king. Then Shakya Mahanam approached King Vijayadabha and said, "Grant me one request." King Vijayadabha asked, "What is your request?" Mahanam replied, "Let me dive to the bottom of a lake. During the time I am underwater, allow the Shakya people to escape. If I surface, then you may kill them as you wish." King Vijayadabha agreed. This is a good idea. Mahanam, who was old, dove into the water. King Vijayadabha ordered his troops to cease killing temporarily. During this time, the Shakya people tried to escape. However, those who fled from the east gate ran to the west gate. Those from the west gate ran to the east gate. Those from the south gate ran to the north gate. And those from the north gate ran to the south gate. King Vijayadabha, waiting for a long time without seeing Mahanama surface, said to his ministers, "Why hasn't my grandfather Mahanama come up yet?" The ministers sent someone to dive and search for Mahanama. After much searching, they retrieved his body. It turned out that Mahanama had tied his hair to the roots of a tree underwater and died. King Vijayadabha, regretting his actions, said, "My grandfather died because of his love for his kin. Had I known this, I would not have waged war against the Shakya." By then, King Vijayadabha had killed 9,990,000 people, 9,990,000 people, with blood flowing profusely around the city of Kapilavastu. Then King Vijayadabha went to the garden of Nikudura, where the Shakya maidens were held, and said to them, "Don't worry, ladies. I am your husband, and you will be my wives. We should treat each other well." Saying this, Vijayadabha reached out to grab one of the maidens playfully. She asked, "What does the great king wish to do?" Vijayadabha replied, "To be intimate with you." The maiden retorted, "Why would you, the son of a servant, want to be intimate with me?" Vijayadabha, enraged, ordered, "Cut off her hands and feet and throw her into a deep pit." The 500 maidens, seeing this, all shouted, "Who would want to be intimate with the son of a servant?" Vijayadabha, furious, ordered the hands and feet of all 500 maidens to be cut off and thrown into the deep pit. Discussion. The Shakya clan did not realize that King Vidarbha's true intention was to exact revenge and annihilate them, not merely to conquer their land and rule over it, which resulted in the name of Kapilavastu being erased because almost everyone was killed. If the Shakyas had known that after Vidarbha's victory he would kill everyone, they surely would not have opened the city gates. Instead, they would have rallied everyone to fight to the end, even if it meant killing the enemy to protect the lives of their people. If they had known Vidarbha's malicious intent, they would not have stopped the patriotic young man from fighting alone on the battlefield, nor would they have scolded and expelled him. It seems the fate of the Shakya clan's extinction, as foretold by the Buddha, had come, and thus events unfolded in such a way. It was also destined, so the celestial demon Mara intervened. Mara always appears where there is death, so he possessed a Shakya person to say what he wanted. Not knowing Vidarbha's malicious intent, the Shakyas opened the city gates and faced the disaster born from hatred and enmity. Another point to note is that Shakya Mahanimam sacrificed himself to save his people by allowing them to escape. However, instead of fleeing, they ran from one city gate to another within the city, leading to their complete massacre. Why didn't they flee? This was Mara's doing, guiding them to their deaths. This was also due to their fate, or past karma, as the Buddha called it, leading them to run in circles to their demise. How tragic and pitiful. The incident of dismembering 500 girls stems from this. The invasion was due to past insults, and the girls' taunts reignited Vidarbha's fury, making him even more vengeful. The insults were also due to witnessing the massacre of the people of Kapilavastu. The verbal abuse added to their karma, hastening the suffering they had to endure. The massacre ordered by King Vidarbha caused a significant shock in ancient India, as so many people were killed within just a few days. Rivers of blood flowed and mountains of corpses piled up. How many times had such brutal massacres occurred in the world before, and how many times since? If everyone in this world were to learn and practice the Buddhist teachings, hatred would significantly decrease, making it possible to hope for world peace. Let's continue to follow what happens after the war in the next section of the sutra. 4. After the battle. After King Vidarbha had ravaged the entire city of Kapilavastu, he returned to the city of Savatthi. At that time, Prince Jeta was in the palace, enjoying himself with the maidens. Hearing distant music, King Vidarbha asked his attendants about the source of the music and learned that the prince was enjoying himself. The king directed his elephant towards the palace where the prince was, but the gatekeeper advised him to wait as the prince was engaged in entertainment. Angered, the king killed the gatekeeper. Hearing the commotion outside, Prince Jeta hurried out to greet his father and invited him into the palace to rest. King Vidarbha asked, "Do you know that I have been fighting against the Shakyas? Why did you continue to enjoy yourself instead of helping me?" Prince Jeta replied, "I heard about it, but I cannot bear to kill living beings, so I could not help." In a fit of rage, Vidarbha drew his sword and killed Prince Jeta. The Buddha, using his divine eye, saw that Prince Jeta had been reborn in the Triascha heaven, and he recited a verse, "Enjoying the fortune in the realm of humans and gods, Prince Jeta, doing good reaps its rewards, all due to present actions. Before suffering, there will also be suffering later. Vidarbha, worrying in both states, doing evil reaps its own harm, all due to present actions." At that time, 500 Shakyan women in the deep pit were in great pain and cried out the name of the Tathagata, saying, "The Tathagata was born here, renounced the world and became a Buddha. How can he not remember us in our suffering and pain here?" Hearing their cries with his divine hearing, the Buddha told the monks, "Let us go and see Kapilavastu and the Shakyas who have been killed." The Buddha, along with the monks, went to Kapilavastu. The Shakyan women saw the Buddha and the monks approaching from a distance and felt ashamed. At that time, King Shakra, holding a whisk, was walking to the Buddha's right, and Vaishravana, the heavenly king, was holding a jeweled umbrella on the Buddha's left. The Buddha noticed and said to King Shakra, "These women are feeling ashamed." Shakra replied, "Indeed, Blessed One." Shakra then used celestial garments to cover the bodies of the women. The Buddha then instructed Vaishravan, These women are hungry and thirsty. You should provide them with food and drink." Vaishravana responded, "Yes, Blessed One." Vaishravana then ordered the celestial beings to bring divine food and drink to the women, ensuring they were well fed. The Buddha then preached to the 500 Shakyan women, "Everything will eventually disperse. Meeting leads to parting. Know that the 5 aggregates of human existence endure suffering and affliction. Taking a body means facing karmic retribution, resulting in both joy and suffering, sickness, aging, and death. If there were no 5 aggregates, there would be no taking of a body. Without taking a body, there would be no birth, no sickness, no aging, no death, and thus no meeting or parting, no suffering or affliction." The Buddha then explained the nature of suffering, its causes, the cessation of suffering, and the path. He taught that suffering arises from craving, greed, hatred, and ignorance, and that these should be abandoned. The women's minds were enlightened, and they became free from the impurities of worldly life, achieving inner peace. Each woman in her place passed away and was reborn in the heavens. The Buddha then recited a verse, "All formations are impermanent. What is born is subject to death. What is not born does not die. This cessation is the greatest joy." The Buddha then told the monks, "In the past, I preached in the Nikula Grove where the people flourished. Tens of thousands attained enlightenment and pure vision here. Now this place is deserted with no inhabitants. From now on, the Tathagata will not return here." After saying this, the Buddha departed, followed by the monks, to the Jetavana Anathapindata Grove. Commentary. Reading this, we see that King Pasenadi was a devout Buddhist, yet his son, King Vidadabha, lacked understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Thus, driven by anger and hatred, he committed the heinous act of mercilessly killing so many people. His grandson, Prince Jeta, however, was a devout Buddhist who understood the Dharma well. When Vidadabha reproached him, saying, "Why did you not help me?" Prince Jeta replied, "I cannot bear to kill living beings, so I could not help." Meaning, he could not bring himself to harm or kill sentient beings, and therefore he could not assist his father in killing people. This enraged Vidadabha, who then killed his own son in a fit of madness without a second thought. Furthermore, the 500 Shakyan women had their limbs cut off and were thrown into a deep pit, suffering greatly but not yet dead. It is crucial to note the extreme cruelty of Vidadabha and his soldiers, who not only severed their limbs but also stripped them naked, leaving them utterly exposed. This inhumane act reveals the savage and barbaric nature of those responsible. When these young women, now lying in agony in the pit, called out to the Buddha, he and his disciples came to comfort and assist them. Despite their terrible suffering, like flowers crushed by cruel hands in the fleeting springtime, the Buddha showed compassion. The Buddha instructed the heavenly kings to cover their bodies and care for them at the end of their lives. He preached to them, teaching that the 5 aggregates of human existence endure suffering and affliction. What are the 5 aggregates? Also known as the 5 skandhas, they consist of form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. These aggregates come together to form a person, divided as follows: body form, comprising earth solid parts like bones, nails, hair, muscles; water, liquid parts like blood, mucus, saliva, urine; wind, air like breath, burps, yawns; and fire, heat within the body; mind, mental aspects; feeling, vedana, sensations of pleasure and pain when the 6 senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, mind, contact the 6 sense objects; form, sound, smell, taste, touch, mental objects; perception, samjana, recognition or memory, the ability to conceptualize external phenomena; volition, samskara, mental activities and intentions that lead to actions driven by thoughts and desires; consciousness, vijnana, awareness and differentiation when the 6 senses contact their objects. Why do the 5 aggregates cause suffering and affliction? Because body, imbalance in the 4 elements, earth, water, wind, fire, within the body leads to illness. For example, lack of solid components can cause osteoporosis, common in the elderly. Imbalance in fire can cause fevers or chills, and lack of water, lubricants, can result in joint pain, etc. Mind, all aspects of feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness bring about suffering and affliction. For instance, seeing forms with the eyes can lead to attachment or aversion. Liking something beautiful leads to desire and attachment, causing suffering, while disliking something ugly leads to criticism and rejection, also causing suffering. Hearing sounds, smelling odors, tasting flavors, feeling physical contact, and thinking about various things can all lead to suffering and affliction. Hence, the Buddha said, the five aggregates are subject to suffering and affliction. We now follow the final part of the story to understand the immediate retribution of karma. 5 immediate karma. When they returned to the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's park, the Buddha told the monks, King Vidyadhara and his soldiers and attendants will not remain in this world much longer. Within 7 days, they will be annihilated. Hearing the Buddha's prophecy that King Vidyadhara and his soldiers and attendants will die within 7 days, King Vidyadhara was terrified. He told his ministers, now that the Tathagata has prophesied that we will not live long and will die within 7 days, inspect the land carefully to see if there are any threats such as enemies, fires, or floods. Why? Because the Buddha's words are never untrue. Ensure day and night vigilance and prepare for any unforeseen events. Brahmin Huko said, Great King, do not fear. There are no external enemies or natural disasters. The great king should remain at ease. Vidyadhara counted the days. On the 7th day, in his joy, he took his soldiers, ministers, and maidens to the banks of the Achira River to enjoy themselves, spending the night there. At midnight, unexpected black clouds gathered, followed by heavy rain and strong winds. King Vidyadhara, along with his soldiers and attendants, were swept away and annihilated by the flood. All were completely destroyed. After death, they were reborn in hell. Additionally, lightning struck and set Vidyadhara's palace ablaze, burning it to ashes. Using his divine eye, the Buddha saw King Vidyadhara and his entourage swept away by the storm and perishing in the floods, then being reborn in the Avicii hell. He then recited a verse, those who commit grave evil, their actions by body and speech, will endure suffering and a short lifespan. Even if they stay in the city, they will be consumed by flames. When their past lives end, they are bound for hell. At that time, the monks asked the Buddha, now that King Vidyadhara is dead, where is he reborn? The Buddha replied, King Vidyadhara has been reborn in the Avicii hell. A monk inquired further, what deeds did the Shakyan people do in the past to be so gravely harmed by King Vidyadhara now? The Buddha recounted, long ago in the city of Rajagaha, there was a large village of fishermen. Life was extremely difficult there. People had to eat tree roots. In that village was a large pond teeming with fish. The villagers would catch and eat the fish. There were 2 types of fish, one called kautaka and another called dual-tongue. The 2 leaders of these fish species conversed. We have done no harm to these villagers, yet they catch and eat our kin. If we have any merit, we will use it to seek vengeance in the future. Not long after, the 2 fish leaders were also caught. At that time, an 8-year-old boy who neither harmed nor caught fish saw the capture of the 2 fish leaders and rejoiced. You should know, monks, that the villagers of Rajagaha are now the Shakyan people. The Kautaka fish leader is now King Vidyadhara, and the dual-tongued fish leader is now Brahmin Huko. The boy who rejoiced at the capture of the 2 large fish is now me. The villagers who ate the fish are now suffering retribution, and I, who rejoiced, suffer from headaches. Because the Tathagata no longer takes physical form, I transcend all dangers. You should be mindful of your actions in body, speech, and mind. You should learn this well. Discussion. The events that transpired with King Vidyadhara were indeed extraordinary and beyond everyone's expectations. When King Vidyadhara first heard the Buddha's prophecy, he was fearful. However, the minister Huko reassured him that there was no need to worry about enemies, fires, or floods, as they had been well prepared. Moreover, by the 7th day, everything seemed calm, and King Vidyadhara believed he was safe, so much so that he ordered a celebration by the river. Little did he know that this would be the final feast of farewell for the most arrogant and malevolent individual in the world. In just a few hours, a thunderstorm with torrential rain and lightning swept away the pride and arrogance of a man who had slaughtered nearly 10 million lives. The storm's waters washed away the blood and buried the bodies of the people of Kapilavastu who had been massacred just 10 days earlier. This tragic event, driven by hatred and cruelty, marked a catastrophic moment in human history. Over 2,550 years have passed since then, yet history shows that humanity continues to harbor hatred and cruelty, resulting in countless massacres worldwide. In the final part of the sutra, the Buddha recounts past karma and the previous deeds that led to these consequences. We see that karma is a natural law. Where there is cause, there is effect. The effect follows the cause as a shadow follows the body, inescapable. Only through practicing the Dharma can one partially transform karma, and by attaining enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of birth and death, one can ultimately escape suffering and the effects of karma. 6. Why did the Buddha not save his family from being massacred? The law of cause and effect is strict and spares no one. The Buddha, Shakya, understood this when he witnessed the massacre of his entire clan. The story goes that when Shakya Buddha was still in the world, his homeland was besieged. One of his 10 great disciples, Moggallana, was eager to use his supernatural powers to save them. However, no matter how great these powers were, they could not overcome karmic force. In the past, during the Buddha's time, King Vidyadhara of the kingdom of Kosala led a great army to attack Kapilavastu, the land ruled by the Buddha's father. The Buddha personally went to meet King Vidyadhara to request a peaceful resolution, but it was in vain. There was a time when King Vidyadhara besieged the city of Kapilavastu. Initially, Shakya Buddha wanted to help, so he sat on the path to block King Vidyadhara 3 times. Although King Vidyadhara ordered his troops to retreat, his hatred did not diminish. Sometime later, King Vidyadhara again besieged the city of Kapilavastu. Shakya Buddha had a disciple named Moggallana, who was the most supernaturally powerful among the Buddha's disciples. At that time, no one could compare to Moggallana, and he firmly believed that with his supernatural powers, there was nothing in the world that could not be resolved. Upon learning of the siege, Moggallana was agitated and said to Shakya Buddha, "World-honored one, the city of Kapilavastu is being invaded by King Vidyadhara. We must think of a way to save the people." Shakya Buddha looked at Moggallana for a moment and then compassionately said, "Moggallana, this is the karmic retribution of our people for the deeds they committed in the past. You cannot help them. They did not repent, but instead remained arrogant and corrupt, so they must face this downfall." Moggallana, unwilling to accept this, decided to use his supernatural powers to save the land of Kapilavastu. At that time, King Vidyadhara's army, numbering 100,000, surrounded the 4 sides of Kapilavastu so tightly that not even an ant could escape. Moggallana used his supernatural powers to fly into the city and selected 500 elite individuals, placing them in a bowl, then flew up into the sky to rescue them from the city. After reaching a safe place, Moggallana opened the bowl to release the 500 people, but to his shock, he found the bowl filled with blood. Moggallana asked the Buddha the reason for this. The Buddha recounted that in a distant past life, there was a village with a large fish pond. During a festival, the villagers caught and ate the fish, including a large one. At that time, a young boy who was vegetarian, out of mischief, hit the large fish on the head 3 times with a stick. The large fish from the past life was now King Vidyadhara. The smaller fish were his current army, the villagers were the Shakya clan being killed, and the young boy who hit the fish was the Buddha himself. The Shakya clan faced near extermination, but the Buddha did not use supernatural powers to defeat the enemy and save his clan. This was all due to karmic retribution, the law of cause and effect. In past lives, the people of the Shakya clan had committed acts of killing, and in this life, they had to bear the consequences. Supernatural powers could not save them. The Buddha said, "Fixed karma is hard to change." Because fixed karma is unavoidable, even though Moggallana saved 500 people from the Shakya clan, they could not escape death. Moggallana then understood the Buddha's words, realizing that the law of cause and effect cannot be altered. Whoever commits bad deeds must repay them. Moggallana was proficient in supernatural powers, but even these powers could not overcome karmic force. Eventually, King Vidyadhara was also condemned to hell. Because humans suffer due to karmic retribution, they endure suffering in the cycle of reincarnation to repay their karmic debts. It's like an endless serial where everyone plays a role. The karma sown in past lives results in the consequences faced in this life. Debts must be repaid. This is an unchangeable law of the universe. Even the Buddha, upon witnessing the massacre of his clan, could do nothing because the universe operates under immutable laws, which no one, not even the Buddha, can change. The only way to resolve all grievances and karmic debts is through cultivation, improving oneself to align with the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. The Shakya clan nearly faced extinction, but the Buddha did not use his supernatural powers to defeat the enemy and save his clan. This was all due to karmic retribution, the law of cause and effect. In past lives, the people of the Shakya clan had committed acts of killing, and in this life they had to bear the consequences. Supernatural powers could not save them.